Hey there, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of What's Hot with Tranquility. I'm your host, Pete Pardo, publisher and CEO of SOT. Today is Saturday, January the 20th. We've got our first full new release program of the year. We've done a couple episodes prior, just kind of talking about single releases. Today we got a small stack of albums that have a couple new ones, a couple late 2017 ones that we're still kind of catching up on. So we hope to have nothing but new stuff hopefully going forward. We'll see, but can't get to everything during the course of the year, and sometimes you get into the new year and you realize, wow, there's like a dozen things that came out in the latter part of the previous year that didn't get to, you want to make sure you talk about. So we got a few of those today, but our main featured album of the day, this just came out recently. This is a pretty big deal out there in the metal world. It's the latest from Corrosion of Conformity, No Cross, No Crown. As you're probably aware, this is the first studio album with Pepper Keenan behind the microphone and also on guitars in about 12 years. He was a mainstay of the band for quite a number of years, but then he was kind of doing double duty with Corrosion and Down. And Down has really been touring a lot, putting out some albums here and there, and he just decided he couldn't do the both, so he put all his energies into Down, but he was convinced to come back to the COC fold for this latest album. Now, here's the guys right there. See, there's a good shot of them, right? There's Pepper right there and the rest of the boys. Very, very strong album. Really strong album. I would say if you like kind of the Deliverance era of the band, where they kind of have this like kind of stoner doom / sludge with a lot of southern rock influence. I was kind of describing COC to a friend of mine who never listened to them before recently, and I said, kind of figure like Black Sabbath meets Lynyrd Skynyrd, sort of, right? It's kind of what you get here. A lot of really, really strong tracks. Top to bottom, just again the kind of like sludgy southern rock, kind of stonerish, kind of doomish. A couple like kind of like psychedelic tunes on there as well. Pepper's vocals are really, really strong on here. I dig them a lot, and I just love the kind of two guitar attack that we now have back in the band once again. So it's just so it's Pepper on guitars and vocals. Woody Weatherman, of course, on guitars and backing vocals. So, you got Pepper and Woody doing the dual guitar thing. Oh, what else we got? We got Mike Dean on bass and backing vocals, and Reed Mullen, of course, on drums. So it's, this is basically the classic lineup of Corrosion and Conformity. Like I said, a lot of really strong tunes on here. The Luddite's great. Cast the First Stone is awesome. What else we got here? Wolf Named Crow, Forgive Me. It doesn't even make any sense for me to start naming all the songs because the majority of them are really, really strong. And it's funny because the back end of the disc starts to get really heavy, kind of epic. So it's just really, really good. Some great up-tempo stuff. A lot of just great riffs. The riffs are killer. Some cool guitar solos, great vocals. I dig it a lot. This is going to rank pretty high. I know it's the beginning of the year, but as we get towards December, let's not hurry things, of course. This is going to rank pretty high up there. Really, really good stuff from Corrosion of Conformity. Next, here's a leftover from 2017. This is one that came out pretty late in the year. Came out a couple months after their Emperor in the Sand album. Of course, I'm talking about Mastodon here, and this is their new EP. It's called Cold Dark Place. All right, get that without the glare. There we go. 4 tunes. This was kind of originally intended to be a Brett Hines solo release, but the more he worked on the songs and started to flesh out the music and the recordings, he brought in the rest of the guys from the band, and they actually decided to just make it a Mastodon EP. But it's clearly very dominated by Brett Hines. He does the majority of the vocals on here, although the other guys do share in the vocals as well. But the music on here very, very different from Emperor in the Sand. Very different. He's got a new toy that he's using, Mr. Hines. He's got a new pedal steel guitar, and it shows up on a couple tunes here. There's a fair amount of keyboards here and there, a lot of interesting guitar textures, a lot of the more like progressive and psychedelic elements of the band do pop up here. This is probably the proggiest collection of songs they've done in a long time. Some kind of dreamy material on here. Of course, there's some standard heavy and complex Mastodon as well, but a lot more textures here, a lot more different colors. Definitely not some of the more commercial tendencies that we've seen from Mastodon in the last couple albums. Not here at all, but I dig it. It's really, really good. 4 tunes, about 20 minutes long. Each song is about 4 to 5 minutes. So highly recommend it. For whatever reason, I didn't even hear they were releasing this. They put out Emperor in the Sand, and that got a lot of acclaim. Everybody kind of loves that album, and and then they kind of very quietly released this a couple months later. So I totally missed out on it, but I'm glad I finally caught up with it. So very, very good new EP from Mastodon. Okay, so this is a band that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, so especially over the last year. They kind of really came onto the scene, burst onto the scene, I should say, with a lot of fanfare in early 2017. They released a debut EP back in, I think it was April, something like that, like a 4-song EP. And of course, the band I'm talking about is Greta Van Fleet, and they actually recorded a bunch of other new tunes. And I believe that the original EP was only released digitally, but then they had started writing and recording new material. They came up with 4 more tunes, and instead of putting out another EP, what they decided to do is combine the new songs with the previous 4 songs in their EP onto one new full-length album. And of course, that's called From the Fires, from Greta Van Fleet. Oh, let's see if we can get there. Here we go. Fantastic. Okay, now there's a lot of talk about how these guys are basically doing the Led Zeppelin thing. Yeah, that is the case, but shit, do they do it well. I've heard people talk about, Kingdom Come, and how Kingdom Come tried to do a similar type thing in the late 80s, and we know where that went. That's a fine band, too, who had, more than a little hints of Zeppelin. But these guys, they're all really young. It's 3 brothers, 2 twins, 1 younger brother, and then the family's best friend on vocals, guitars, bass, and drums. The one brother sounds just like Robert Plant, age 2021. The other brother is twin, has got the Jimmy Page stuff down pat. The younger brother on bass also doubles on keyboards, so you got a little bit of electric piano, organ, and mellotron showing up on here. Fantastic. Obviously, he's been, studying his John Paul Jones. And then you got their buddy on thunderous drums. And it's, man, so many of these tunes, you listen to them and you'll swear they were outtakes, leftover tracks from Zeppelin 1, 2, 3, and 4. Seriously. A couple tunes, they hint on a little kind of like Rolling Stones type of vibe, which adds a little bit of variety to some of the flavors of the album. But for the most part, this is just kick-ass, accessible, memorable, melodic, bluesy, hard-rocking, Led Zeppelin-style, modern-day rock music. These guys, I think, are going to be huge. This is just so good. I think the buzz that they're getting, and I think the buzz that they gave me from listening to their music, kind of like what we got when Rival Sons first burst on the scene a couple of years back. So I expect big things from these guys. Really, really talented. Again, if you love classic early Led Zeppelin, you're going to totally dig this. So Greta Van Fleet, check it out. Okay, this next album. This is a kind of a new discovery for me. This is a band, I guess you can call them a stoner band, but there are also a lot of progressive rock and psych influence as well. The band's called Weedpecker, number 3, or 3 is their 3rd album. Kind of a ridiculous name for the band, but hey, what do I know? Fantastic, fantastic stuff. Okay. How do I describe them? I don't know. At times they have a little bit of that Sabbath influence, but they're a lot more progressive, a lot more psychedelia going on here. Lengthy tunes, lots of cool guitar solos, keyboard washes, cool vocals, thunderous riffs, some jamming, some space rock stuff going on. It's just, dig it a lot. Dig it a lot. I'm probably going to look into some of their earlier stuff, but just a really, really strong album. And, gotta love the artwork too. So, Weedpecker, number 3. That was released right at the beginning of January. So now we're going to go back again to 2017. So this is another band that also on Stickman Records. So both of these are on Stickman Records. This one happens to be from Elder. They have been around for a number of years. I believe they're from Massachusetts. Reflections of a Floating World. I believe this is their 4th album, if I'm not mistaken. Again, similar kind of premise. Originally like a stoner doom band that have kind of morphed and taken on a lot of progressive rock tendencies, a lot of psychedelic elements into their own sound. Long tunes. There's only, I think, like five or six tunes on here. Every one of them is 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 minutes long. A lot of good, long, spacey, liquid guitar solos. Every now and then, those doomy, stonerish, Sabbath-style riffs pop up. Really cool vocals, extended tunes, some Mellotron spots, other assorted keyboards. Really, really cool stuff. You got this kind of like Roger Dean-inspired, cover artwork. It's just really good. I've enjoyed this so much. I went out and checked out some of the earlier Elder stuff. That's really, really good too. Very, very cool band that if you haven't experienced yet, I highly urge you to. So, another 2017 release. This band just totally blew me away. The band is called Earth Witch, Out of the Shallow. Man, if you like, this is a terrific stoner doom album with a touch of psychedelia. If you love classic early 70s Black Sabbath mixed with some Pentagram, okay, as well as some like maybe a little bit of heavy blues rock, like Blue Cheer, that sort of thing. Fantastic production. Man, the riffs are just enormous here. Killer guitar solos. Little touch in spots of Thin Lizzy. It's a trio, right? But the lead guitar player on a bunch of tunes has like overdubbed some like dual harmony lead guitar stuff. So you'd swear it was like, Gorham and Robertson from Thin Lizzy playing, mixed in with like the obvious Tony Iommi influence. Cool vocals, just sledgehammer stuff, top to bottom. Not a weak track. Thunderous material. If you love really heavy stoner metal with that kind of proto metal, biker metal, blues metal, whatever you want to call it, sound from the late 60s, early 70s, you need this. Yeah, just go out and get it. Earth Witch, Out of the Shallow. All right, now from there we're going to go over to Germany. This is one I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago. We're going to eventually get to it. It's been taking me a while to kind of get through it, get used to it. This is the latest from German progressive rock legends Eloy. It's called The Vision, The Sword and the Pyre, Part 1. It is basically a concept album, Part 1 of going to be 2 parts, right? So I don't know when we're going to get Part 2, but it's basically like a rock opera / concept album telling the story of Joan of Arc. So Frank Bornemann, the founder and leader of Eloy, guitarist and lead vocalist, did a lot of research on the legend of Joan of Arc, put together this whole intricate storyline, okay? Got a bunch of like guest vocalists, choirs and things like that to round out the story. It's got some narration, some spoken word narration. We've got a Canadian vocalist. She's doing the Joan of Arc character, like kind of the spoken word vocals on here. Like I said, a lot of choirs, a lot of different vocalists. It's more of a vocal-oriented album than some of your classic Eloy albums from the 70s, where you had tons of like organ and synthesizer explorations and a lot of guitar solos from Bornemann and whatnot. You still get some of that here, but it's a lot more kind of intricate and more storyline driven, so there's a lot more vocals. Your mileage with the narration part of it may vary. Some may find it a little distracting. I've kind of gotten used to it, but it's a pretty nice album. I like it. I'm not going to say it's going to rank up there with some of the Eloy classics of the 70s, like Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes and Oceans and what have you. But, for a band that's been around, almost 50 years, pretty damn good. So I recommend it. If you're an Eloy lover, you probably already have this, and I'm a little late to the game. But if you don't, if you like Eloy, maybe haven't followed them much in recent years, their first album, new album released since 2009. So it's obviously taken them a while to put this one together. Very, very good. Okay, another I'm going to call them legends because they basically are, from the prog scene. These guys burst on the scene in like the early mid 80s. They were kind of part of that second wave of like British progressive rock, along with Marillion and IQ and Palace and 12th Night. Of course, I'm talking about Pendragon. This is called Masquerade 20. It's a DVD release from our folks, our friends over at Metal Mind. This is basically a really long concert taped in Poland from, I believe a year or so ago, celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Masquerade Overture album, which of course is one of their most beloved and strongest albums of their long discography and their long career. It's a fantastic performance. So not only do they play the entire Masquerade Overture album, they also play a bunch of other favorites from their catalog over the years. Really, really good stuff. Great camera work, great sound. The band is, fantastic as always. Just a really, really good, be prepared. It's over a 2-hour show, so be prepared to spend some time with this. But you get so many great tunes from the Pendragon catalog performed here. Guys are still got it, still going strong. So make sure you check that out. So with that, that's the last of our new or slightly new releases for this episode. Of course, now we're going to go to Forgotten Favorites, where we look at some favorites of mine from yesteryear or even from more recent times that maybe people have kind of forgotten about or maybe nobody knows about, but they're favorites of mine. So today I've actually got 2 for you. I figured I'd pick 2 because this band only ever released 2 studio albums. They've got some live material, but both their studio albums are really, really good. I'm talking about the rockin' blues rock band from Ireland called Taste, who kind of came on the scene, and I believe it was 1969, featuring Rory Gallagher on guitar, the legendary Rory Gallagher. Their first album, self-titled Taste from 1969. Just a great, great collection of blues rock songs with fiery guitar and great vocals. Blister on the Moon, Sugar Mama, Born on the Wrong Side of Time, Catfish, classic Taste songs there. 1 year later, 1970, their next album called On the Boards. There it is right there. On here you got What's Going On, Railway and Gun, If the Day Was Any Longer, Morning Sun, title track, I'll Remember. Really some memorable tunes. They kind of came on the heels of the kind of the Cream on their way out. But unfortunately, they started to get really big. They were selling albums, tours all over the place. They played at the Isle of Wight Festival and knocked everybody on their ass. And by the time that was happening, the band were already splintering apart. And, within a month or 2 after the Isle of Wight Festival, they announced that their breakup. Rory Gallagher went solo, and the rest, as we say, is history. Gallagher had a very good solo career all throughout the 70s and the 80s till his untimely death in the early 90s, but we've got a lot of material to remember Rory by, both studio and live. Of course, he was always best live on stage, but the band Taste, I think, these guys could have been really, really huge. I think, Gallagher had a really decent following and got fairly big enough on his own, but I think if Taste would have stayed together, if that was possible and continued on, I think they would have been a very, very extremely popular best-selling act, because I think that trajectory was on its way, and there was something about those heavy blues rock trios in the late 60s, early 70s that really resonated with fans. And I think this band would have been really, really huge. I think that folks were looking for a replacement for Cream, who had broken up, and I think Taste could have been that next band, but obviously it was never meant to be. So, if you don't have these 2 albums, get them. Really, really good. Underrated. Not enough people talk about the band Taste these days. And while you're at it, also get the live at the Isle of Wight Festival live album, which is also absolutely fantastic. So that's my forgotten favorites, I should say, of today. So till then, we've got more stuff lined up for you in the weeks to come. I've got coming up any day now. I know I keep talking about it. I got another rant ready for you, talking about rock biographies and autobiographies. We got some other stuff in the works too. So till then, make sure you investigate all this new music. But of course, don't forget the classics. See you next time. I'm Pete Pardo. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Here on the mighty YouTube. Take care. Bye-bye.